So what was happening in Spruce Pine during the lead up to the events of the September 26, 1923 riot? Well, quite a lot, actually. We begin our story at the Hawkins, Wiseman, Chestnut Flats, Deer Park, Hoot Owl, and other mines dotted throughout the Tri-County region, but especially in the Spruce Pine area. With the discoveries of major veins of feldspar on a mountain owned by the Bailey family near Ledger and in the Hawkins Branch area near Spruce Pine, combined with the rapidly increasing demand for both feldspar and mica, capital for opening and expansion of mines in the region poured in, resulting in boom times for the local economy. Many new companies set up their operations in the region, with funding coming from interests in the northeastern United States. Mines expanded with high-tech equipment and techniques such as open cuts and terraces to access the feldspar and mica, along with cranes and other methods to prepare the materials for transport, as illustrated in the photo on the left. The loaders filled cars which were then sent to the Clinchfield Railroad. The Hawkins mine in particular had an impressive overhead trolley system that hauled the ore from the mine to the railroad some 2 miles away. Now on the right is a photo of a similar system that was put in by the owner of the Hawkins mine at a different location. This is for illustration purposes. The mining boom also resulted in the rapid expansion of businesses in Spruce Pine, like the Spruce Pine store seen here, which was built by the Harris Mining Corporation in 1920. It replaced the original L.A. Berry store, a wooden building on Lower Street that was built around the turn of the century. This brand new brick building was stocked with all manner of goods that was not readily available before. Now, in the past, local residents had only small general stores where they could purchase the basics before this new style of establishment came into existence. They grew and harvested most everything they needed at home. Now, they could purchase an assortment of clothes, grocery items, farm implements, and many other modern products at places like the Spruce Pine store. However, this required them to have either cash or scrip that was earned from work at the mining companies to buy the goods. Now, in this photo, they are celebrating the arrival of Buster Brown at the Spruce Pine store shortly after it opened. Note that this building is still on Locust Avenue, it's also known as Lower Street, and it's now the Wiley Building and home to DT's Blue Ridge Java. In addition to the coming of the mines, changes in transportation were also accelerating in the Toe River Valley. With the coming of the railroad in the late 1890s, early 1900s, and its increase in demand for laborers to build the tracks to Mitchell County and down the loops in McDowell County, rail companies were forced to import laborers to work, much like the mines would do 25 years later. In November 1899, work stopped on the Ohio River and Charleston Railroad, the precursor to the Clinchfield, when gangs of African American laborers were brought in and were driven out or were met as they tried to start work. All of these men were told not to enter, quote, under pain of death, unquote. In a move eerily similar to what happens in 1923, the railroad company requested that North Carolina Governor Daniel Russell send protection for the workers so they could labor on extending the line down to South Carolina. In fact, North Carolina sent nearly one-half of its prison population in the early 1900s to Mitchell County to work on building the railroad to Spruce Pine. But there was controversy. An inquest by legislators was held on accusations of abuse of prisoners who were marched from Mitchell County to Marion for return to the state prison in January 1903. Several of those inmates died on the march, but no formal charges were ever resulting. Other laborers on the railroad were ethnic groups brought in from the Northeast, such as Irish, Italians, and Eastern Europeans. Like with African Americans, this inevitably brought hard feelings and clashes between workers and management, and also some of the local residents. An example of this occurred in 1906 when the deaths of some Italian workers got that country's embassy embroiled in a legal battle with the railroad over their deaths. That resulted in a lawsuit that the railroad eventually settled. There are also rumors of many men being killed either in the camps or when working on the line, involving disputes between workers and management. There are legends of bodies being buried in unmarked graves all along the train tracks and in camp locations, both African American and white. This photo is of a crew at Camp 4, located along the construction of the loops near Alta Pass. It features some of the imported labor. Note the man, the third from the right. He is packing a pistol while posing for the photo. By 1923, Spruce Pine had experienced huge changes by having the railroad in place for almost 20 years. The daily visits of the train brought contact with the outside world, along with a powerful way to transport raw materials such as mine ore and lumber to faraway markets. This encouraged the expansion of the local economy. The photo on the left is of a train departing the Spruce Pine Depot on its way south to Marion, with lots of folks gathered round to see it off. Now, in the photo on the right, a young Mac Thomas, Alice Thomas's husband, is pictured with the Spruce Pine Depot in the background. You can see all the activity going on around the depot as a boxcar is being unloaded. It was made years before the incident with Alice occurred. This photo is from a personal album belonging to S.T. Henry, who was the publisher of the Tri-County News for decades. But the changes brought by the railroad pale in comparison with the arrival of paved concrete highways in the region. For generations, the mountains had been mostly inaccessible, with foot trails and, at best, crude roads being the norm. In fact, many of these trails dated back hundreds of years. They were forged during the Revolutionary War times by settlers moving into and through the Toe River Valley region. The few vehicles that were here were limited to travel along short stretches of improved road, which often was 1 mile or less. The Tri-County Improvement Association, a group of citizens from Avery, Mitchell, and Yancey counties, had been working for years, agitating for better roads and other improvements for Mitchell, Avery, and Yancey counties from North Carolina. Their work was successful, as the passage of the Mammoth Good Roads Act provided funds for 5,500 miles of highways in North Carolina, connecting county seats and towns throughout the state. Spruce Pine was a big benefactor from the act, as it was at the crossroads of several trails and crude roads for the region, and that, combined with the railroad depot, gave the town and surrounding region a major boost. 5 major road projects that began in the early 1920s were completed by 1924 that were the progenitors of Highways 19E and North Carolina 226. This map illustrates where the work was taking place. Project 94A ran between Spruce Pine and Newland, up 3 Mile Creek. It was begun in June 1920 and completed in August 1923, with the final 5.04 miles from Spruce Pine to the Avery-Mitchell County line being opened. Project 800 was a 6-mile stretch of road between the Mitchell-Avery County line to the Plumtree community. That's today's U.S. Highway 19E. It started in 1922 and was completed in 1925. Project 855 ran from Spruce Pine to the Mitchell-Yancey County line for 4 miles, beginning in 1921 and wrapping up in 1923. Project 856 ran from Spruce Pine to the Ledger community, a distance of 7 miles. It started in 1922 and was completed in late 1924. This project will come back up in events of the riot. And finally, Project 869 ran from Ledger to Bakersville, a distance of 5.5 miles, beginning in 1922 and being completed in 1925. Projects 856 and 860 are today's Highway 226 between Spruce Pine and Bakersville. Now, what's important to note here is that with all these projects is the rapidity of this work, going from very few improved roads anywhere to completed, paved, and improved highways throughout the region, making access between the communities much easier. Going from improved roads like this one from the Mount Mitchell station on Cox's Creek out to Little Switzerland, this is currently NC 226A, and paths like the road between Spruce Pine and Burnsville, and construction work like this curve at the Mitchell-Avery County line near Mayland Community College's location. This photo is from 1922. To the same section of road after completion in 1924, with the girl walking up a concreted highway. This was often back-breaking work, and it demanded lots of workers, just like the mines did. And, just like the mines, there was a local labor shortage, so workers were brought in, including an African-American crew from Birmingham, Alabama, to work on the Plumtree Road project, along with another private company working on the section of highway between Spruce Pine and Bakersville with both local and imported labor. This is another photo of work along the Spruce Pine to Bakersville Highway made in the early 1920s. But all of the road work had a ready supply of labor courtesy of the North Carolina State Prison. Under a lease system, road construction companies could acquire prisoners to do work, paying the state for their use on a monthly basis. The companies therefore had a steady supply of labor as long as they paid. So, the state of North Carolina was getting these massive road projects constructed rapidly. Plus, the state earned additional money by supplying labor to the companies for a fee. The prison also provided chain gangs under their own supervision to supplement the work by the companies. Of course, the prisoners had no say in any of the matters, being shipped wherever they were needed and working jobs and hours that they were assigned. This is a photo of a prison crew working on the Bakersville-Tocane Road. You can spot them in the photo by their striped pants. Nowhere was this progress in roads more evident than the impressive new bridge being built over the North Toe River in downtown Spruce Pine. It was completed and opened in 1924. The new concrete bridge was replacing a steel bridge that was slightly upstream from it. This bridge had been washed out several times in floods and replaced, and was rickety compared to the new concrete bridge. In fact, the pilings of that old bridge are still visible today when the leaves are down. Just look out in the Toe River across from downtown in the area near the Carolina Theater. Plus, work was going on all around town to improve streets and provide important infrastructure improvements. Streets in town would also be paved in the 1920s, resulting in a vastly different Spruce Pine than existed in 1923. Finally, town officials were working on developing a more dependable power source for the region. Shortly after the riot took place, contracts were signed with Carolina Power and Light Company and with Southern Bell to provide electric, telephone, and telegraph service to the region. Many of these contracts were for 60-plus years, with expiration dates in the 1980s, to guarantee the companies could recover their investments in constructing lines and facilities to provide the services. In particular, the CP&L contract was to eventually replace the town's dependence on a hydroelectric dam that was constructed in the Toe River by Harris Mining. See the picture. That only supplied electricity during parts of the day to the town when the company didn't need it. Work was also underway to provide dependable and safe water and sewer service to Spruce Pine businesses and residences. This section on change in the Spruce Pine area would not be complete if we did not discuss race relations in the region. Mitchell County had a notorious past when it came to race relations. Some newspapers stated that African Americans were prohibited from entering the county even from its beginnings and prior to the Civil War. Here's some specific examples. On April 21, 1896, the only documented lynching that took place in Mitchell County's borders happened in the Cranberry community, which is now located in Avery County. Robert Chambers, an African American, was reportedly tied to a tree, shot and stoned to death after his arrest for a fire at the Bellevue Sheep Ranch where he worked. He was accused of setting fire to a barn and attempting to chloroform Mary Wilson in an attempt to rape her. He was arrested and was to be taken to Bakersville to face the charges, but a mob in the community arose, seized him, and killed him. At least 9 of the lynchers went free after no evidence was presented against them in their court trials in Bakersville following their arrests for his murder. There are also numerous newspaper accounts of African Americans not being welcome in the Rock Creek section of Mitchell County. An example from November 5, 1899 was of an African American band from Asheville who was traveling to campaign for Richmond Pearson, a candidate for Congress. The band had to flee for their lives after attempting to enter the area and being told that they were threatened with death if they came in. On July 24, 1903, the Wilmington Semi-Weekly Messenger reported on July 17th of 1903 that 50 African Americans who were building a telephone line in Mitchell County were run out by one man in the Rock Creek section. They were told that no African Americans were permitted to, quote, line in Rock Creek, unquote. This next event has overtones of what was to come in Spruce Pine. On May 19, 1922, C.C. McBee, some say that his last name was McCabe, brought a detachment of African American workers to begin a paving project on the Bakersville-Tocane Road. Shortly after they began work, a man entered the camp area of the workers and advised the superintendent there that the laborers were to leave. He was sent away by the superintendent. Later that afternoon, the man returned with 100 other men. They were brandishing pistols, lassos, and lariats. This group informed the superintendent that while no one had ever been lynched in the county, they ignored the cranberry incident here, one could be staged quickly if the work crew didn't leave. The first man who came to the camp moved to the front and stated, quote, very quietly but very firmly, unquote, that the African Americans were to be gathered up and marched to the railroad at Tocane. There, a passing freight train was halted and the men placed on a freight car. The man who was leading the group inquired about a fare to pay to transport each man of that work company. The conductor provided a price. The group then paid it to the trainman, and it left with the African Americans, taking them to an unidentified location. On July 7, 1923, the Mitchell Banner of Bakersville reported that 4 prisoners working on the Spruce Pine Ledger Road had attacked a guard, took his guns, and fled into Tennessee where they were chased. A battle royal between the pursuing guards and the escaped prisoners occurred near Kingsport, Tennessee, with inmate Max Reddick being shot and killed, inmate Ed Sneed being wounded, and inmate John Kelly being captured near Johnson City. One inmate, William Mallory, was still on the loose at the time of the report. This is the same prison work detail John Goss was in when he escaped later that summer. So there were lots of documented bad blood between the races already present in Mitchell County before the riot took place. So this is Spruce Pine in 1923. Major changes are afoot in transportation and infrastructure, along with the rise of jobs available outside the home offering regular pay for work, plus an influx of outsiders who are in direct competition for jobs and resources, and a history of racial incidents taking place all over Mitchell County. The powder keg was awaiting a spark to set it off. That arrived on September 26th. In our next section, we'll take a day-by-day review of what happened in September and October of 1923 in Spruce Pine and in Bakersville.